Since Dr. Dennis Pang, Dr. Huan Lin, and Professor He Defen took action to expose Tsai Ing-wen's academic dishonesty. ThesisGate discussions have now entered into a series of litigations, the most captivating of which is Tsai Ing-wen's defamation case against Dr. Dennis Pang. On March 31st, 2021, the Taipei District Prosecutor's Office charged Dr. Pang and only Dr. Pang with defamation. The three scholars merely wanted to find Tsai Ing-wen's thesis and confirm her degree, but now they're being persecuted for asking too many questions. What happens to them is a test of Taiwan's transitional justice reforms. If an administration can order a prosecutor's office to go after a public media personality for political reasons, what chance do normal citizens have of holding their government accountable? The prosecutors handling the case represent the country, and their indictment against the ThesisGate movement indicates that they are cooperating with Tsai's agenda. So far, their argument has boiled down to, why don't you believe Tsai Ing-wen? It's clear the prosecutors are trying to protect their superiors. ThesisGate's judgment will be handed down very soon, and retribution will be swift. Every indictment, every statement, and every letter will become part of ThesisGate's chronicles. We've talked about Prosecutor Liu Cheng-woo's first letter addressing Dr. Pang's 6-point statement, which detailed issues with ThesisGate court case proceedings. In his letter, Liu denied Dr. Pang's request to live-stream trials because he thought it was unnecessary. Liu didn't even bother justifying why he thought it was unnecessary. He just flat-out rejected live-streaming trials. Liu admitted in his letter that he was building his case around deductions made from indirect evidence. His strategy hinges on the judge accepting photocopies and emails as hard evidence. This is exactly why Judge Zhou Yuxuan, who insisted on seeing original evidence, had to be removed from the case. Tsai Ing-wen is the one behind Zhou's removal and Prosecutor Liu's deduction strategy. Liu's letter also included 8 reasons why he thought the defense was guilty, a decision usually reserved for the judge. It also claimed the defense was liable for proving that the photocopies prosecutors had were unreliable. Liu doesn't realize that evidence LSE provides can't be counted on. The University of London should be the one dispensing evidence because it's the school that would have issued Tsai's degree back in 1984. In fact, by providing evidence, LSE has exposed that someone there is actively trying to intervene in this controversy. Liu's letter failed to address why authorities dropped charges alleging Dr. Pang violated the Civil Servants and Recall Act. It didn't explain why Prosecutor Huang Wei could get away with removing evidence that didn't favor Tsai by listing it in non-indictment letters, ultimately preventing a judge from seeing it. Less than a week later, Liu sent another letter, but this second letter didn't address any outstanding issues, which shows that the prosecutors on this case do not care about justice or fairness. That second letter simply repeated what prosecutors had already said about the burden of proof and its justification for indicting only Dr. Pang as opposed to all 3 scholars. Why were prosecutors so obsessed with the burden of proof and justifying their reasons for singling out Dr. Pang? First, the final part of Tsai's plan is to take ThesisGate to the courts and use forgeries cooked up by national security organizations to legitimize her fake degree, ending 3 decades of tormenting worry that she'd be exposed. Remember, we've already figured out that the University of London won't confirm or deny the authenticity of Tsai's documents, giving her the room to forge anything she wants. This works to Tsai's favor, especially since the Foreign Ministry has successfully obstructed Judge Zhuo's order to obtain University of London's testimony. Legitimizing Tsai Ing-wen's false degree is one of the reasons why she had to take ThesisGate investigators to court, namely Dr. Dennis Pang. Second, prosecutors don't have a single piece of original evidence. All they have are photocopies and emails, and they know that. That's why they need to establish that the defense should be on the hook for proving that the photocopies aren't reliable. By doing so, the judge will think that the photocopies are authentic and bona fide by default. However, photocopies without a clearly defined source do not have any legal standing. The digital files LSE's Kevin Haynes provided simply do not have as much legal standing as actual files from the University of London. Could it be that prosecutors are banking on the judge not understanding which school issued Tsai's degree to win their case? Third, the courts are playing into the prosecution's deduction by indirect evidence strategy simply by allowing debate over the legality of photocopies as evidence to happen. The fact of the matter is, prosecutors have not found a single piece of valid evidence that shows Tsai's viva took place or that her thesis existed in 1984. The viva and the thesis are the two core elements of this lawsuit. Liu flat out denies that Tsai's thesis doesn't exist. He claims that there are records that show it was placed in libraries. It's clear prosecutors are trying to use its case against Dr. Dennis Pang to create the necessary precedents to legitimize Tsai's education. Dr. Pang's lawyers Jim Chang and Li Zhenghua are not idiots. They saw right through prosecutor Liu. Jim Chang sent a letter responding to Liu, bringing the case back to ThesisGate's core issues. Reminding prosecutors that not one library in the world has a copy of Tsai's thesis from 1984. Chang argued Dr. Pang was stating facts and he shouldn't be locked up in a case fighting for his right to freedom of speech. Thorough investigation and examination have failed to uncover a bona fide copy of the plaintiff's thesis from 1984 or 1983. Photocopies of a proper thesis do not exist either. The defense requests that the court have the plaintiff present a legitimate copy of the plaintiff's thesis. The defense will not accept photocopies or other documents that lack legal standing. The plaintiff should submit a copy to a representative of the defense's choosing, who will then photocopy it at the courthouse, after which the thesis will be returned to the plaintiff. If the plaintiff in earnest does not have a copy of their thesis, then they should request one from domestic or foreign entities where the thesis is being kept. An individual with a proper PhD cannot be without a legitimate thesis placed at some institution in the world. A copy of the plaintiff's thesis should be kept at the courthouse in order to streamline pre-trial and trial proceedings. Knows what ThesisGate's core issue is. It's just that they can't say it out loud, otherwise they hurt their own cause. Prosecutor Huang Wei submitted images of Tsai Ing-wen's supposed thesis as evidence. Later on, they listed it in Professor He Defen's non-indictment file. The pictures indeed showed a thesis with a yellow cover, but the thesis was not from 1984. Anyone with a pair of eyes can determine that the yellow-covered thesis had been bound recently. Like Zhu Junzang, prosecutor Huang Wei tried to sell a modern book as a thesis from 1984. The pictures Huang Wei submitted are so shoddy, they never should have been accepted as evidence. That's why they were placed in He Defen's non-indictment file to remove it from scrutiny. If the images of the thesis made it into an active case file, the thesis never would have survived an authentication test. One side argues that the existence of a degree validates the existence of a thesis. The other side argues that the thesis flat out doesn't exist. Even before trials begin, both sides are already at each other's necks. Jim Chang's letter brought ThesisGate arguments right back to the fake thesis rhetoric, something that the plaintiff is deathly afraid of. If court discussions focus on the thesis for too long, then Tsai's camp would have to somehow explain why her thesis has been missing for 37 years. Tsai herself says she doesn't know when her thesis went missing, but it's near impossible for multiple libraries to lose the same thesis. Furthermore, if a school lost a thesis, then the author and library in charge of the thesis would know when it was lost. From this, we know that a 2011 incident involving the thesis was an attempted smuggling. Furthermore, from that instance, we know that Tsai Ing-wen isn't the only one that's involved in this controversy. Prosecutors are trying to make this case about records, documents, and degrees, and not the thesis itself. If the prosecutor's case is allowed to rely on the evidence Kevin Haynes provided, then they can avoid Tsai Ing-wen getting called upon as a witness in this case, something the prosecutor must prevent at all costs. Liu Cheng-woo had no choice but to respond immediately to Jim Chang's letter and steer the course of the case back into his desired lane. Liu's response to Chang once again talked about the burden of proof. This time, the prosecutor stated the defense must speak to the facts of the case in their entirety and not just cherry-pick the ones that are favorable to them. Furthermore, the defense must also explain their method of proof. Liu's ultimate point was, the burden of proof is on the defense. Liu went out of his way to muddle and disorient the rights of the defense and the obligations of those involved in the case. Article 96 in the Code of Criminal Procedure protects a defendant from duress and coercion. That law gives a defendant the opportunity to explain themselves and respond to their charges. In certain cases, the defendant is expected to explain their method of proof. Liu has twisted Article 96 to his favor and used it as justification to place burden of proof on the defense. Unfortunately for Liu, Article 161 of the Criminal Code clearly states that the burden of proof in a public case falls on the prosecutor. It's clear Liu lost his nerve when responding to Jim Chang and grabbed at straws. Liu provided even more reasoning in his response to Jim Chang as to why only Dr. Pang was indicted, as if he knew his initial explanations were not sufficient. Liu stated that, as former Prosecutor Evaluation Commission spokesperson, Pang should have had sufficient knowledge of the law to know that he was acting unlawfully. As former director of National Taiwan University's Institute of Journalism, Dr. Pang should have known he was an influential figure. Liu stated that for those two reasons, there was sufficient reason to believe Dr. Pang knowingly acted with malicious intent. That's why he was singled out. It turns out Taiwan's justice system treats people differently based on their status, and that's why people can get singled out. Prosecutors might as well admit that their case against Dr. Pang is a political witch hunt. A pretrial hearing for this case is scheduled for October 20th, 2021 at 2:30 p.m. The presiding judge seems to have realized that the case's circumstances are quite complicated. Unlike before, the hearing's subpoena no longer says that the judge will seek to end the pretrial hearing after one round of debate. Again, Dr. Pang will make a case for live streaming the trial. The cameras will be a window from which justice's light can spill into the darkest corners of the justice system. Taiwan's government can't control the media or the flow of information overseas. That's why ThesisGate can be openly debated in other countries. The North America Taiwanese Professors Association is one of many overseas communities discussing ThesisGate. The NATPA, under the leadership of its then-president Li Zongzi, openly disavowed Professor Huan Lin while showing Tsai Ing-wen its full support. The organization invited both Tsai Ing-wen and Xiaobi Kim, two pivotal ThesisGate players, to its annual conference. Over time, though, with more evidence mounting against Tsai, such as getting caught in her own constant lies, the fake photo taken in Boston, her Viva details, admitting to her 1983 Soochow University tenure, NATPA members began losing their faith in her. Some members went so far as to challenge Li Zongzi, asking how he got his hands on a copy of Tsai Ing-wen's diploma, which he published to Facebook on June 11, 2019. At the time, Li was the first person to publicly display Tsai's reissued diploma from 2015. The envelope the diploma came in had simplified Chinese words on it, begging the question, where did Li get this copy of Tsai's diploma? On August 9th, Li published a post in the style of a Burkean parlor responding to ThesisGate. Li claims that ThesisGate had gone on for so long and that so many people had gotten involved that the public had lost sight of the original argument. He said that people have forgotten what the initial argument was about and their only concern now was to blindly validate their belief. Li didn't address any of ThesisGate's concerns, instead choosing to arrogantly lambast and belittle those that embraced ThesisGate's ideas. Here's the thing. The problem on June 10th, 2019 was that nobody could find a copy of Tsai Ing-wen's thesis. Nobody wanted to talk about her degree. Do you know who wanted to talk about Tsai's degree? Li Zongzi, when he posted a picture of her diploma one day later. From then on, ThesisGate focused on Tsai's degree. It's obvious that Li Zongzi subscribes to the existence of a degree proves the existence of a thesis rhetoric Tsai has pushed. His thinking is just like that of Judge Zhang Yonghui and prosecutor Liu Chengwu, who emphasized the importance of Tsai's diploma, not her thesis. All three of those people have been brainwashed, or worse, are cooperating with Tsai's agenda. Li Zongzi's post did not have the desired effect. One NATPA member shot back at him with a scathing response. What do you mean social issues can't be simplified into discussions of reason? Let me be clear, I have no desire to engage in a debate with Li Zongzi. I just want to know the truth behind ThesisGate. That's why I want to know how he got his hands on Tsai Ing-wen's student document. Debate and truth are two different things. Doesn't Li Zongzi understand that? His post was an attempt to divert attention away from ThesisGate, but it has clearly failed. Burke once pointed out that, to some people, honesty is not an easy concept. Li's respondent made another point saying, it's hard to understand how Li Zongzi, who resides in the US, got his hands on Tsai Ing-wen's diploma. It leaves a lot of room for imagination. Somebody said Shi Fanglong was the middle person. In 2018, NATPA gave her a research award when Li was president. Before that, Shi secured a 480,000 British pound donation for LSE from Tsai Ing-wen. Li, Shi, Tsai. Is this the connection? I really hope Li can give us an answer. Dr. Wang Taize also responded, telling Li, considering how long this thesis discussion has gone on, I'm sure many NATPA members will agree with me when I ask that you reveal your role in all of this. I suggest you tell everyone how you got your hands on Tsai Ing-wen's 2015 diploma. Li Zongzi finally made a 5-point response on August 12, 2021, saying it was going to be his first and last remark on the matter. 1. Did I create and modify the photo I posted? My answer, no. I posted as it is after I got it. If you don't believe it, prove it otherwise. 2. Is the object in the photo genuine? On my own account, I believe it is, and that's why I posted it as a fact to reveal for the best of public interest. If you don't believe it, prove it otherwise. You have to physically examine the object in question, but you can't just talk into the conclusion you want. 3. Obviously, I do not possess the object in question, so it's not for me to allow or not to allow you to examine the object. I think you can ask the court to do it if you make a case. If the court does not see any reasonable reasons to do so, it is not my problem and I can't help. 4. Where did I get the photo? Wrong question. My source is nothing fancy, but I have no obligation, legally and morally, to tell you. I shall set an example to value source protection, which is course 101 for anyone who tries to pursue truth in the public domain. Even the court can't force me to reveal my source. It's different from revealing the fact. I've done my part to reveal facts, and if you think you have your part to do, it is mentioned in 3 above. 5. Why make this response 2 years later? In the past 2 years, I've set up a very effective email filter, so most of the uninterested posts will go to the trash can automatically. But this episode, like the virus, successfully snuck into my post that has nothing to do with this endless frenzy. So I noted, also, Professor Li Dunho has been bothered enough to speak up many times. I think I owe him some explanation why I never bend myself to wrestle. Just like Liu Chengwu explaining why prosecutors singled out Dr. Peng, Li Zongzi responded to the public's concerns in points. None of Li's 5 points offered any solid explanation as to how he got Tsai's diploma, even though an explanation would serve to help clarify doubts about Tsai. Li knows that explaining how he got Tsai's diploma would only generate more questions than answers, because he most certainly did not obtain it under ordinary circumstances. When he first published Tsai's diploma on June 11, 2019, many commenters asked Li how he got the diploma. Even back then, Li simply deleted unfavorable comments and shut off the function on his post. Li Zongzi told people to get the diploma tested, and that's one thing ThesisGate investigators have been calling for. But Tsai's camp is the one that refuses to do so. It will not openly provide the 2015 reissued diploma. If Si Fanglong is Tsai Ing-wen's plant at LSE, then Li Zongzi is Tsai's plant in the academic circle. However, he feigns innocence and clearly disregards his peers' request for the truth. Li knowingly and willingly acts on behalf of Tsai and her people, but Li shouldn't forget he'll be remembered on the wrong side of history. Tsai Ing-wen's diploma can't be real. None of the diplomas she's shown are real. On August 6, 2021, Dr. Huan Lin emailed Tsai's 2010 and 2015 diplomas to University of London Vice-Chancellor Wendy Thompson to ask her opinion on their authenticity. Thompson immediately replied, saying that the university will look into the diplomas and get back to Dr. Lin. Dr. Lin didn't ask for the University of London to look into the diplomas he sent. He just wanted Thompson's opinion. Could Thompson's decision to examine the diplomas mean that the University of London is getting ready to tell the truth? US President Richard Nixon's Watergate scandal erupted in the second year of his second term. It seems that Tsai's ThesisGate scandal may be gearing her up for a fall in the second year of her second term. This is the endgame. The end is nigh.